Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You get divorced. You get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter because, as you know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. And we're here with one of our Fresh Starts experts, Ashley, talking about something that nobody's talking about with divorce today. So I'm very excited to talk about it. Ashley, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, thank you. I'm Ashley Mahoney. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire is where I'm currently licensed. I do a mix of both virtual and in-person sessions, specializing in EMDR and trauma therapy, usual parts work, to get really into that like nervous system deep space, right? And then I'm also certified in psychedelic-assisted therapy. Right now, ketamine is the only legal medicine we are able to use with people. Technically, it's not considered a psychedelic, but it's in the family been really studied well for therapeutic use.
Amazing. So that's why we have you here today, is because I talked to Cindy Di Tiberio, who's a writer, a long time ago, and she talked about how she did I think it was ketamine, and it enlightened her to the fact that she wanted to get a divorce, and it really changed her life. She always says it's like her life was like before and after that moment. Yeah. And she talks a lot about that on her Substack. And then, I've gotten to know you, and I'm like, every time I get to talk to you, I'm like, tell me more about this. Tell me more about this. And so I'm really fascinated. I think with divorce, we've heard the old, like, go to therapy. You have the divorce coach. You have the healing. But divorce really it shakes every part of your life. It shakes your childhood trauma, your sexuality, like every single thing. And often you're kind of like, I've done all the healing and I'm still not where I want to be. And this is where I think that maybe you could come into play, Ashley. So tell us first of all, what are psychedelics? Like when I hear psychedelics, I think like lava lamps. So What are psychedelics? And what do you like? What do they do for us?
Yeah, that is, I could talk about that question for hours, but I'll try to like tighten it up.
It's okay. You can come back anytime.
Psychedelics have, been studied for years. They've been utilized for thousands of years in like indigenous cultures and healing communities. There's been kind of a resurgence since, the 50s, 60s, early 1900s of the therapeutic use and how pivotal it can be used in therapeutic ways, mixed in with certain types of therapies to really expand and connect in a deeper way, right? And so oftentimes we, as a society, have like left. We don't feel like grounded in our bodies. We're not really in our bodies, right? And so there's a lot of controversy or judgment, right? Stigma attached to it's like, oh, you're just doing drugs or you're just doing it to like disconnect. Well, psychedelics is the opposite. So oftentimes maybe substance use like alcohol, smoking, even cannabis sometimes, right? Like is kind of dissociative, right? Even like detaching. Psychedelics are you're going into your stuff. And so that's also why it's really important to have a guide, harm reduction models. I talk to a lot of people about that. Especially because, you hear about like bad trips and all of these things. It's all about set and setting. What is your mindset? Are you in a safe setting? Because that is really going to dictate whatever happens with whatever medicine you're using.
It is fascinating. As you're talking, I'm like, I feel like it's like the Wizard of Oz. Like you go from like black and white to color, and it's like you go down like the yellow brick path. So let's like set the scene here. I'm a woman. I've gone through a divorce. I'm trying to heal. I come to Massachusetts where you are. What does it look like to go through this process with you?
Yeah, so we have a few different options. We do a lot of groups. So we have a couple of different themes for groups. We have elevated motherhood, which is really, say, we'll use that as an example, right? Say you're a mom, you're coming in, you've had this situation happened. You just went through a divorce. You have all this upheaval. You've been maybe in therapy for a while, felt like you've done a lot of work on your trauma. And there's this stuck piece still, right? Ketamine is technically an anesthesia, so it's not technically a psychedelic. But what they found out in research with ketamine is people are having better outcomes after surgery. They were doing more research on it and found a lot of success around major depressive disorder and other, mental health conditions as well. And so ketamine really kind of pauses your default mode network or kind of does some work around the default mode. It really is quieting the noise, right? And able to expand in other areas, right? Glutamate is kind of sent through the whole system, which is a neurotransmitter. It's opening up all these spaces. So it's almost like pausing things and able to letting you see who you really are, who you want, who are you, where have you been, kind of like
Mm.
this whole space in between in the background that maybe you haven't had access to in a long time. And so when you're talking about that like stuck piece, it's a lot of these belief systems and narratives that like I've always just felt this way. I don't know where it came from. It's a lot of this old stuck patterning. And so oftentimes people will come in with an intention, and they could be anything, right? It could be, I want to reconnect with joy. I want to reconnect. I want to feel happy. I've been stuck in this pattern. I want to like heal some inner child parts, right? And so we have this whole group set up. Once people come in, we have an introduction meeting on Monday for an
Mhm.
hour, just so everybody get connected. We go through all the logistics. Thursday, they come in. So we're actually having a group today. So the group comes in at 12. Everybody brings cozy blankets. We have these like spots on the floor. We do intention setting, lighting candles. They bring their medicine. They take their medicine. We do cards, and they have their journey. It's probably about an hour to 2 hours. And then they kind of come back. We don't really do integration that day. It's really important to just like let some of that aha moments or emotions move, settle. A lot of journaling happens. And then we come back the next morning for integration. Everybody gets to share their journey. And then each person is able to reflect in a non-judgment, advice-giving way. And that's where a lot of that connection and magic happens. We're wounded so often in relationships, right? Especially after divorce. Divorce typically is not the initial wounding, right?
Right. Right.
And so that is like an aha moment of maybe doing their work where you're like, you know what? I'm tired of repeating these same cycles over and over again. They get divorced, but they're still, like you said, that other thing, right?
Mhm.
And so it's really reconnecting and healing the relational wounds. So we'll have some
Right.
attachment stuff, right?
Right.
And these wounds. And so when you're able to heal in relations with others too,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
actually be vulnerable and really show up, and there's tears and there's waves of emotion that come through.
Yep.
People are just holding space without judgment, right? They're just looking at you with compassion. And that is one of the most profound pieces of the group too.
So I have so many questions, Ashley. Number one, I would feel like, and I'm going to say this for myself too, there are
Yep.
probably things in the back of my mind that I'm afraid to try. Like, how do you overcome that fear to go through this?
We do a lot of prep. So obviously I like way oversimplified the process
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just in this short period of time.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes we do a lot of prep. A lot of my clients have gone through the process. So it's been nice because I kind of have a leg up. We both do in that
Mhm.
relationship. So
Right.
we created a lot of safety already. And yeah, it's expectation management. We don't really know. We can't guarantee what is going to come up. What we can guarantee is we will create like as safe an environment as possible for you. We talk about touch. We talk about all these pieces of consent and all of these major pieces before going into this
Right.
situation. And we like repeat it a million times. We're
Yeah.
like, we know you're not going to text us this way or whatever. We're like, but
Yeah.
it's like yourself and all your parts that maybe at one point didn't feel like they could say yes or say no,
Right.
even in just choices day to day. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's important.
Now, when women come on like today, we're doing this on a recording on a Thursday, and they're going to take the medicine and they go under, I guess, for like 2 hours, right? Do they go home that night and just be a mom again?
So we talk about that also during our prep, right? Because sometimes people do travel to come here. So sometimes people just take a room at one of the inns or local bed and breakfasts,
That's what
which
I would
is
do.
really
Yeah.
nice, right?
Yeah.
So ideal. It's a block or two away. They can walk. You're not supposed to be driving after ketamine.
Okay.
So sometimes we really have, if they're in a new relationship too, or have somebody watching the kids, it's like, what's the plan?
Right.
try to have a
Okay.
plan, right? Because you
Yeah.
really are in this like super open space and that lasts a couple weeks.
I was gonna
Not
ask
to the
that
same
too.
extent, right, as that
Yeah.
first 20 to 48 hours, but there's this openness that's there, right? That's like less noisy and more open and connected. So,
Yeah, you don't wanna have to go deal with, like, Bluey
yeah,
not working on TV. Um,
yeah,
yeah, no, that was my other question is, like, what happens after all of
yeah.
this?
So, with integration, it's really nice because they're by telling their story and their journey, that's powerful in and of itself, right? They're not required to share. Most people share.
Right.
And then we have a talking crystal, so
Right.
like
Mhm.
obviously they have the full
Love that, yeah.
floor, no
Uh-huh.
interruptions. And then each person in the circle, like I said, is able to respond. So I usually have another
Mhm.
leader in the group too, another therapist who's been trained the same way. There's two other of us. There's three of us total. And it's just usually just like, even if you're just quietly like acknowledging during shares, like
Yeah.
just being seen. So much of our wounding is like being seen and heard in the way that we need to be
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
right? So, um, it's just this like really moving. Everybody ends up like, teary. Um,
Mhm.
and I think even just those monumental moments of like reflection for that
Yeah.
person is so powerful, right? And reaffirming what their journey was. And so then
Yeah.
after that, usually people get on group texts and are continuing to support each other throughout too. So
Oh, I
it's
love
really
that.
about creating safe spaces for women because we don't have a lot of those either,
Yep.
where you can really feel held in a
Yeah.
sibling way is important. And so if they're my client, I'll continue to do therapy with them. So I usually have a session right that next week with them, and I might be incorporating some sort of, more somatic work, parts work,
Right.
EMDR with that, really checking in, giving them small little things, throughout the week.
Yep.
If they aren't my client and they do have another therapist, we work with other therapists too to
Okay,
kind of
cool.
support them in ways to continue to support their client.
Yep.
And
I
then
love that.
if they are new and they aren't in therapy, we really recommend they are in therapy, at least for a little bit afterwards,
Mhm.
because there's so much connecting that can still really happen. And, that's where all the magic is almost like after the medicine. The medicine is the catalyst,
Right.
right? But then
Okay.
doing the work, being in it is all of that connection afterwards.
I love that so much. And I've worked with you for a while now, so I would 100% feel safe coming and doing it, which I'm planning on someday,
Yes.
coming. And as long as I can get away from my kids for that long, because I'm not coming back home that night to deal with Xbox issues. And so, so I guess my question before we pivot is like, if someone is going through a divorce or they're, let's say, post divorce, because I feel like a lot of the healing comes post divorce. What would be some of the benefits that they would get from psychedelic assisted, therapy like
Yeah.
this?
I think oftentimes people are just reconnecting with those like young parts and like
Mm,
really doing that work of just being like, what do you want? You
yeah,
deserve to have whatever choice you want to make, right?
right.
And we all have a lot of shame. And so with divorce, probably comes a lot of shame. And
Yeah,
so it's really being able to move through the shame ideally and then have this openness to be able to be more free, make new choices. What are you passionate about? Kind of reconnecting with all these things that you like to do in small ways.
yeah. I could see too, unrelated to divorce, it must be so healing for a mother wound issue too, because you're healing in a group of women.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep. And so often we feel alone in all of our narratives and belief
yeah,
systems. I'm the only one
yeah.
that feels this way. I'm the only one that because not to get off on a totally different topic, my theme all day yesterday was a lot of this, gaslighting by the medical field and a lot of our society, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
as women, we internalize all of that. Oh, it must not be that bad. I must be too
Yeah.
crazy. I'm being dramatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these internalized thoughts and belief systems just add up throughout our whole lifetime. And
Yeah.
so it's really shifting the needle on all of that and being like, so it can feel overwhelming because you're like, what now? But that's why the support
Right.
afterwards is so pivotal too.
Yeah, and what a great, like, midlife crisis thing to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm turning 40, I need to do something. And, like, it just I wanna validate how bonkers it is that, like, we are human beings and our we have organs and blood, and yet our body holds all of these memories and these belief systems. I mean, I'm just always continuously fascinated by that. And that, like I had surgery when I was pre-verbal, and I know that that's part of
Yeah.
the subconscious, programming that I have. And so it's like, it's just
Your
wild to
body
think like,
remembers all the
yeah,
things,
like
right?
we are really intricate beings. It's fascinating. So if anybody's listening to this and they're like, I would love this, remind us again where you work, Ashley. And if people want to get in touch with you, the best way to do that.
Yeah. So my business is Arise Wellness. You can find me at arisewellness.org, online, on Instagram at arise.wellness. Reach out. I love talking about this, and I can offer consultations and really try to just harm reduction, reduce stigma, and education in all the ways, always. And yeah, you're not alone. There's a lot of people doing this work. So
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about this, how this is going to be the next wave of like healing and processing. And can people fly in to work with you?
mhm. Yeah, so I'm about 35, 40 minutes north of Boston. So there's
Okay.
commuter
Girls
rail
trip.
too. If you don't even want to Uber, you could Uber. You could take the commuter rail. Like there's options. So
Amazing. That sounds like a perfect divorce celebration.
on the water, where like the ocean's right here. You can
Take a
go
month.
for
Just
like a
go for
walk
a month. Just
here.
yeah, send your kids to the grandparents. I love it. I'll be there as soon as I can. Ashley, if somebody's listening to this and they're going through a divorce, what would be some words of encouragement you could leave them with?
Yeah, I think it's you're worth healing, and you can heal yourself, right? You have that innate ability to heal, and you're worthy of healing and feeling good and connecting with joy.
I love that. Well, we appreciate you so much, Ashley, and the work that you're doing, and we're so happy you're part of our community and Fresh Starts. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.